A badge of honor. A badge of honor. Police officers and first responders wear badges to let their communities know they are here to protect and serve. But that's not how it feels today, and the stress of the job is taking its toll, taking lives through suicide and post-traumatic stress injury. A Badge of Honor podcast features the cast of the same name, Sam Horwitz and John Salerno. Sam, John, and the team offer the first responders workshops through their critical incident stress management teams and mental health liaisons to offer state-certified T-COLE credit programs that save lives. It's time to smash through the stigma. It's time to heal from your injury, and it's time to back our blue. Welcome to A Badge of Honor podcast. Here are your hosts, Sam Horwitz and John Salerno.
Hey, welcome to A Badge of Honor podcast with John and Sam. We are healing our heroes today. Welcome, Sam. How are you?
Doing great. And we got to give a huge shout out to our media sponsor, OBBM Network. Thanks for joining us, everybody. John, I'm doing great, but it has been a roller coaster ride for the past 2 weeks here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area with the loss of 2 officers and one we are burying on Thursday. Really tough.
Yeah, Carrollton suffered a huge loss. Our Carrollton Police Department, right here in the Dallas Metroplex area, suffered a huge loss with an officer who was helping with a DWI arrest on one of our tollways, and was struck by a driver and killed. It was Carrollton's first loss in the history of the Carrollton Department. So a lot of those officers are trying to cope with this, and it's not easy. You know, we've also had, when we talk about a loss at the workplace, we got to look at Dallas Methodist Hospital right here in our hometown too, who are nurses and doctors over in the labor delivery. 2 nurses were killed with an active shooter just this past over the last day or two. And, it's hard when you're watching it on TV. It's a lot different than when it happens to you in person. We kind of fictionalize it when we see it on the news or when we see it, come across our Facebook feeds. But when it is up close and personal, when it's in your backyard, when the people that are affected, it has a direct impact. And that's why Badge of Honor is so important, because the mental health that goes into this and the coping mechanism skills that these officers and these nurses and these first responders need to pull them through this tragedy is very important. So,
absolutely.
So today I want to dedicate this show to the Carrollton Police Department and the family of our brothers and sisters over there, and also to Dallas Methodist Hospital, who lost 2 labor and delivery nurses. Very, very sad and tragic events. Nobody should have to go to work and lose their life for any reason.
And that's the reality of police work these days. Look at what happened in Bristol, Connecticut, with the 3 officers shot. One is fighting for his life. The other 2 have passed. Great video of a family that has stepped forward. And the wife was saying, Bristol has a heart, and that's Bristol, Connecticut. You can find coverage on that from Fox. They lit up their entire house in blue and are doing a lot to support the community, because those officers support them. And that's what we're talking about, is true support. And it is wonderful that we can have, light up your neighborhoods in blue, that we can have letter writing campaigns to the police to say thank you. It is a huge deal for the officers to see the thank yous, but it's even a bigger deal to have a chief of the department always knowing that he's been through a lot of stuff. He shares his stuff, and he actually cares about the well, your career and what that brings, all of the trauma, all of the pain, all of the tough stuff. And our guest tonight has been through it all, and he has made it a point to not kind of keep it close and just, we meet a lot of chiefs that are like, oh, just suck it up and move on. We're the tough guys, right?
And you know what's scary about that? We just came off the the police chiefs convention here in Dallas. And what you just said, it holds true, because hundreds of people came to our booth, the Badge of Honor booth. And you were asking the same question over and over again on the brain budget, or how the mental health and wellness plans were going within the department. And every conversation, I don't know if you noticed it or not, but I was taking note. Every conversation started off with a pause,
Or
with
a
a
chuckle.
well. And in the last 5 years, we've lost over 991 officers across the country to suicide. That and that shouldn't be there. You should have a positive, aggressive attitude towards your mental health within your department. You should you should not be answering a question with ahs and wells, and we're working on it. We are too far into this. Right here in San Antonio, here in the last 7 months, 6 officers took their own lives. When is it enough? When do we say, hey, we got to get on this? When more officers are taking their lives by suicide than we're losing from gunfire, there's an issue. There's a big issue.
Yeah, and so without further ado, we want to dive right into this really important conversation with Chief NGang from Pinole. Yes, I said that right. Pinole Police Department out in California. He is no stranger to podcasts, having a podcast of his own called the 6 Pillar Podcast. Make sure you visit that, like that, subscribe to that. Chief, welcome to a Badge of Honor podcast.
Yeah, it's super honor and blessed to be with you both, John and Sam. And the lead-in was great, and you guys hit on a lot of key topics that are so important to talk about. And one, John, is what you just said. Leaders saying, "Well, I don't know," or I'm hemming and hawing, and they don't have a direct plan on what you're doing. One thing I'll bring up is budget, right? What is your budget for wellness programs? And if you're still an organization that doesn't have one, well, what you prioritize is what you will budget. So we have to start budgeting for these programs, because otherwise there's no strategy behind them, right? Wishing is not a strategy. So we have to understand that we have to budget for these things if we want to make these programs real and bring them to fruition.
Well, let's talk about that. John, let me just hit on this budget thing, because California, big state, Texas, equally a big state. As a chief, when you talk to other chiefs, and let's say it's a small department. I mean, we met folks that have 1,000 officers, and we met folks at IACP that have 30 or less. How would you explain to the chief that have that 30 or less how to budget for this when they're thinking, I got body armor, I've got weapons, I've got this training, I've got that training that take priority? How do you explain to them? It's like, that training is all well and good, but if you don't have people that are okay up here, all that training is for naught.
Yeah, so I'm glad you said 30, because that's exactly what we have in Pinole. So, in fact, a small organization can actually adapt and pivot a lot more quickly than a larger organization. So what I would say to that, Chief, is that you have to prioritize our people. The mental health of our people has to come first before any reforms, because the bottom line is we can go out there and talk about all reforms. We could talk about 21st century policing pillars, but the bottom line is if we don't have people wearing our badge and patch, then everything falls apart. So we have to prioritize. And I certainly believe that you will budget what you prioritize. So if that means you have to save the next year's widget for next year, we have to put money into this budget. And I'm not saying you have to start off with a high budget for that, but even if you just put, let's say, $5,000 away, and each year you start building that and increasing that, but it has to come with communication to the people that hold the wallet. right? The purse strings.
Right.
You have to you have to educate your council, you have to educate your mayor, and certainly your city managers have to be understood to why this is such a big priority and why we need to do this.
Absolutely. Well, we are talking budgeting for brain health for our officers with Chief NGang. We got to take a quick break. We will be right back.
What is the role of American government anyway? Is the role of government to decide where I can go and where I can't? Is the role of government to work tirelessly to destroy vital infrastructure that keeps goods and services from my customers? Is the role of government to choose who can drive, fly, or ride according to mandated stipulations that threaten my body, health, mind, and conscience? Without medical freedom legislation in place, our rights and freedoms are one vote away from being dissolved. Individually, change is improbable, but as an aggregate, attainable. It's time to act with one voice. My voice.
And my voice.
And my voice.
And my voice.
To protect our freedom, creating one voice that cannot be ignored. This requires your voice too. Your voice, your feet, your vote, not just at the ballot box, but training to be a poll watcher, precinct chair, judge, or early ballot counter, so you are doing all you can to protect the fairly counted American vote. Move Freely America. Go to movefreelyamerica.org to find a chapter near you. Plug in, donate, and help our legislators defend our God-given rights under the Constitution. Move Freely America, because my voice
and my voice,
together with your voice, we're one voice that cannot be ignored. Donate today. MoveFreelyAmerica.org.
Hey, welcome back to a Badge of Honor podcast with John and Sam. We welcome our guest, Chief NGang over at Pinole, California Police Department. And we're talking about our brain health, our brain budgets, and me and Sam always joke around, which is really not it's a kind of a sarcastic joke, is that the brain budget is usually right below the paper clips. And that's not where it's supposed to be. It should be right above the safety equipment and the vest and the gear and the tactical equipment. It should be a top priority. It should be one of the top 5 things that any commander or any department should be prioritizing in his yearly budget. And I know, Chief, you do this. You watch out for your officers' brain health as well as their physical health.
Yeah, I think it's so important. I think for any leader out there, understanding that our people are our biggest resource and our most valued resource, we have to prioritize mental health along with our physical health of our employees. That has to be our number one priority before we do anything else, before police reform, before any other programs that you want to initiate. Our people have to come first. And we have to show them as leaders that they're important, and we prioritize them by showing budgets, by talking about these type of programs and bringing programs to our organizations.
Now, you've been in policing for 35 years, a long time.
You stole my line.
Well, hey, that's why we're business partners, because we can complete each other's sentences. We're always on the same page. So 35 years in policing. 2019 was the worst year. I'll say that's when people really took note and kind of sat up and was like, what is this thing, suicide, going on in our police department? But you personally, your experience, I believe it was in 1993, which is way early. It was something that the officer taking his life, that was a giant wake-up call for you. Could you walk us through what that was like?
Yeah. So, going back into the 90s, I was working down in South Florida. And I was working with an individual. His name was Asher Resiliency. Asher and I were good friends. We went to the academy together. I was in his wedding. One day it's early morning hours and my phone rings. And I always joke around when I go around the country. I say the phone was that little plastic thing that hangs on the wall. A lot of our listeners and a lot of people we present to don't even know what a phone was back then, right?
Yeah.
I think it was something that sat in your pocket. But so the phone rang and I answered the phone, and somebody's screaming on the other line. They said, Asher is dead. And then before I could even say another word, they say, Asher is dead. And I remember pushing myself up against the headboard, and I'm thinking, okay, we're not working today. Like, what are they talking about? And for some reason, my mind went to someone was joking around. And before I could even say another words, they say, Asher is dead. And this person is crying. They're yelling on the phone. And what I said is, okay, you know what, we all sign up for these dangerous jobs, and there may be a time and place where we don't go home to our families, right? We put our lives on the line for people we don't even know. He goes, no, you don't understand. Asher shot himself. And immediately I just went to the place of like, how could this happen? You know, red flags. And for anybody listening, and you think you're going to find red flags, there may not be red flags and that everybody keeps talking about. But we found out is that this gentleman, Asher, drove his vehicle. We all had take-home cars to the edge of the Everglades down in South Florida, took out his service weapon and shot himself in the chest. So if people are listening and they're familiar with law enforcement and suicide, that's not a very typical way a male dies by suicide. They don't shoot themselves in the chest. I wish I had time to tell the entire story of Asher, but really what happened was the most impactful thing happened to me in the days following. And I went into the briefing room the next day and bottom line, looking around, looking for our chief, looking for chaplains, looking for resources. You know, the landscape was different then. There wasn't really peer support. There wasn't CISM and all these other tools they have in place now. But I was looking for something. What are we going to talk about? Are we going to talk about this? We're going to find out what happened. And the most impactful thing happened to me for my entire career happened in that briefing room that day. And what do you think that was, John and Sam?
You saw that there was no help. There's no the stigma was alive and well. They were trying to hide it.
Yeah. So the most impactful thing happened to me, and that was nothing. Nothing happened. And that stood with me and resonated with me for such a long time. I remember leaving that briefing room that day, and I walked down to my police car and I sat there, and I felt I was a pretty resilient guy and a big guy and work out, and I was a tough guy, but it bothered me. And I remember saying to myself, if I ever get into a position where I can change this outcome and this feeling that I'm feeling today, I will do that. So that resonated with me for 20 something years, moving up different ranks. I never wanted to become a police chief, and here I am. And in 2019, I said, I'm going to do something about this. And it's been inside me for such a long time. And as a man of faith, I've often prayed about what direction to take. And honestly, I wish I could tell you that it was some great, idea that I had, but I woke up in the middle of the night around 2 a.m, went to the kitchen table, and in about a half hour sketched out something called the Asher model. And what that was really just a multi-targeted, multifaceted approach to creating an organizational wellness culture. Now, I have to bring up something that I want to talk about, because a lot of officers and a lot of police leaders are still calling it officer wellness. The bottom line is 2/3 of our organizations are not officers. And when we use those terms, we tend to alienate people. So we really need to talk on a broader scale and say that these are organizational wellness programs, not just officer wellness programs. You know, we have crime scene techs, we have dispatchers, we have a lot of other people that are not officers that we have to make sure we're including them in these programs.
That's a really good point. That's a really good point. Me and Sam had the pleasure of doing a workshop with just all dispatchers, all the 911 telecommunication officers, and they are the lost group sometimes, and they are probably one of the most traumatized groups because of the closure. They don't get the closure. They just they get the visuals in their mind, and they have to try to piece this all together. So yeah, I like the way you model this and take away the officer and put it into organizational, so that brings the whole job together.
Yeah, John, yes, go ahead, Chief.
I'm sorry. John brought up a good point, and then I'm sorry to cut you off, Sam. He brought up about dispatchers not being included in the IACP. He called them the lost group. I won't say they're the lost group. They're the forgotten group.
Forgotten group.
A lot of times.
Group, yeah.
And what happens is funny. I go around the country and I speak, and dispatchers came up to me and go, we're not even included in the debriefs. Like, wow, talk about it. Really a tone deaf leader who doesn't understand that dispatchers need to be involved in that, to hear the outcomes, to see what happened. Much different when you only hear things and you don't get to see and visualize what actually happened, nor do they get the follow-up as to what happened. So, right. Sam, I'm sorry to cut you off.
No, you said exactly what I was going to say. And that, those that are, when they're included in the debrief, yay, okay, that's one step. But often the follow-up after that, then they're not included. It's like, let's continue the entire process. And the Asher model that you created makes perfect sense. I mean, when you look at it, And you can, for those of you that are listening, not watching, it's the Asher, ASHER model. And for organizational success and wellness, this has to be it across the board for every department. You created it. It's not difficult. Everybody can read it and they're like, yeah, well, that makes sense. It's like a dull moment, right? So you jump from this happening in 1993, you waited in your career, 2019, you created it, and it's now 2022, coming up on the end of 2022. And we're still talking about either the super slow adopters or the no adopters. And we cannot continue as law enforcement. We cannot continue to run our departments, our organizations this way. Trauma is a reality of police work. And if you're in a police department, if you're in an organization that's not recognizing you as a person dealing with the traumas, hey, there's a lot of departments like Chief Gang's department that maybe you should consider going to, because you can't unwind that time. You can only move forward. And if you do not have the pillars in place, if you do not have the programs in place, because we can peer support and we can SISM and we can talk about those two things till the cows come home. And come on, we're in Texas. We know all about cows coming home. You can sit there and talk and preach and but unless you put a full program in place, it's just talk.
But see, Sam, here's the problem, and Chief, I want you to tell me if I'm off the path here. The pillars. All right. See, we're the police department's a paramilitary organization, right? We're all pretty much trained in the same way. Though some of the laws may differ from states to state, all right, training is usually the same in every state in the academy. You pretty much. SWAT teams train, sniper ways, active shooters, they all train from a certain curriculum, right? When we look at mental health, everybody's doing their own individual thing, which confuses a lot of people. Some have higher standards, some have low standards, some have no standards. We have to, like the chiefs put together, the ASHA program, have to put that nationwide, put those pillars into effect nationwide so everybody has that same model. Because like we said, doesn't matter if you are a department of 30 or a department of like the NYPD that's got 34,000. It will work. It will work if you make it work, if you put some time and effort into it, correct, Chief?
Yeah, I think whatever program you have, and certainly, I'm proud of the ASHA model, but there's other people that are doing great things out there. I think you have to have a multi-targeted, multifaceted solution. And we have to understand that what resonates with Sam may not resonate with me, and what resonates with John may not resonate with Sam. But if you have this multi-targeted, multifaceted approach, you're hoping something's going to resonate with one of your employees, right? So that's what we're talking about. We talk about PTSD yoga, or yoga for first responders, or mindfulness. Well, I may not be a downward dog Lululemon guy, right? But other people are, and it's going to work for them. So we as leaders have to remove ourselves from this and just make it a comprehensive program. Just because we may not follow that program, or we may not be into yoga or mindfulness, doesn't mean that someone in your organization is not going to benefit from those. So we have to really take ourselves away, take our ego out of this, and present what the best practices are for all our people. And we're hoping that it resonates with one person, because if we all gather together, if we could save one life and change one outcome, then we've done our job. And that's what we need to do, because the numbers are astronomical. John, you brought up some numbers earlier. Keep in mind that those numbers could be underreported by a factor of 2.5. Right. So now you're talking about twice as much you're talking about. And then you mentioned that we're losing officers to suicide more than gunshots. But what you didn't talk about is that we're losing almost double the amount of officers to suicide than all of the line of duty deaths combined. Collisions, medicals, shootings. we're losing twice as many officers by their own hands. We have to do something. Leaders have to step up, start prioritizing our people, start prioritizing mental health. And if you're not interested in doing that, then do me a favor. Go ahead and resign. Someone else will come and take your seat. And it's time to move on to a new leader in your organization. And that's just my personal opinion.
Yeah, we're talking mental health and wellness with Chief NGang, and we got to take a quick break. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Interested in starting a podcast or TV show? Worried about what you'll say and how to keep it engaging? Think you'd like to be a guest on podcast, radio, or TV shows? Hi, I'm Susan Hamilton, owner and founder of OBBM Network, and I would like to invite you to an OBBM media training to get the tools you need for a relaxed and polished performance we'll be proud to share. Our specialized training techniques include role play, voice training, and everything you need to deliver a confident, clear, and engaging interaction. Go to offbeatbusiness.com. Go to the calendar and register for a training that's convenient for you. Dates available now, 214-714-0495.
Hey, welcome back to the Badge of Honor podcast with John and Sam. We are speaking with Chief NGang of the Pinole. Am I saying that right?
Pinole.
No, but I didn't want to cut you off, John.
Pinole, California Police Department. Chief, you had 32 years in law enforcement. Let me ask some. We're talking about suicide and the mental health wellness programs. Let's flip the script a little bit on the mental health aspect of why cops now, law enforcement, are also leaving the job. They're leaving in droves. We're losing good officers because the pressure, the stress, the programs are not in place, and they know mentally they cannot withstand 20 years or 25 or 32 years within that same environment without causing too much damage to their family, their friends, their children. It does have another effect on, besides the suicide effect, it also has an effect on our attrition. We're losing officers by the thousands.
Yeah, I think that you hit on a good point. And, in 2019, when my journey began and speaking about this topic, it was really based on just wellness programs. And I quickly learned over time that there's a distinct intersection between leadership and wellness programs. And what we're void of is leadership at this time. We're talking about wellness, but we're not talking about leadership. It's really, like I said, a distinct intersection where us as leaders have to create an environment. And it's something that I learned from Bob Chapman out of Barry Waymiller talks about this, but creating an environment where people feel valued and they also feel psychologically safe to raise their hand and say, I need help and I need assistance. And that's what we're missing so far. So when we say that people are leaving, yes, they're leaving the profession by numbers we've never seen before. Some of that is the demoralizing environments that we have. But I'm going to tell you that there's a lot of studies that are showing that people are leaving the organization because of poor leadership, not because of what the communities are not supporting them. Because again, people leave the leadership of an organization, not typically the organization because of any other reason. So we have to step up as leaders and really start identifying what we can do to show value of our people, number one, but be supportive in this crazy environment that we call law enforcement right now.
But when you have a leader in place, right, when you have a leader in place that has the rub some dirt on it, get it up, suck it up kind of attitude, it's hard for that officer. I mean, yes, he can leave that department, go to another department, or just leave law enforcement altogether. How do you change something like that? I mean, because most of those people that have that suck it up attitude are those narcissistic officers, those narcissistic leaders that say, I'm not leaving this job until they kick me out or until I'm dead. So the damage that they're causing, they do not see. They don't visualize it because they're old school. They don't see the correlation between mental health and law enforcement.
Well, I think we're facing the need for a paradigm switch when it comes to leadership in our organizations. The paramilitary style of leadership, the autocratic leaders, they're on their way out. Yes, there's still some place. We need leaders that are willing to step up and say, I'm willing to lead with love, compassion, and empathy. I'm willing to be an active listener and understand that sometimes we have to raise the flag and say we need help outside our organizations to get through this challenge that we're facing right now. Many times, we've all been in law enforcement long enough to know that it's really been intrinsic. we haven't really raised our hand and say we need help from outside people. So it's really important to find culturally competent people to help partner with us, to help us through this, and to provide resources for us. We can't do this alone.
Now you bring up a good point, Chief, because John and I have seen in a lot of departments, the chief is like, oh yeah, we're gonna address the mental health component. Just appoint somebody to be the mental health officer, and everything will go through there. It's like slapping a Band-Aid on an arterial bleed. So again, there's that separation, and we've also seen the opposite, where we have chiefs of police coming forward, addressing their staff and organizational staff to say, this is what I've been through personally. We are going to create a team, and there's not one person in this organization who is going to be reprimanded, who is going to have something flagged in their file. If you need help, speaking as a chief, I encourage you to ask. Those are the kind of changes that seem to be too much for some chiefs. And then John, you and I have talking to officers, that's even too much for some of the officers who have kind of been worn the badge for a while. It's like, well, can I really trust that, I'm not going to be sitting in a fitness for duty if I reach out? What are your thoughts on the in-house versus officers utilizing their own insurance and kind of going outside the department to get help?
Yeah, it's a difficult question to answer. There's a lot to unpack there. One of the things that we have to understand is in our model is awareness. And I think you talked about this. So number one in the ASHA model is awareness. We have to create an environment where we raise awareness. And what that means is, and excuse the cliche for a moment, but it's okay to not be okay. We keep hearing about that, but we can't stop there. We have to do something proactive to bring these people back to okay, right? Taking these conversations out of the shadows and into the open. And that starts with a chief. Imagine a police chief going into an organization, into a briefing, into an environment where he's sharing a story of trauma, sharing a story of help and reaching out and getting assistance. That's a powerful, impactful story. It's a powerful, impactful move for a chief to do that. Yes, it makes them vulnerable, but wow, does it really impact the organization and gives people the opportunity to go, it's not just me. I can do this too, and I can raise my hand and say I need help. And that's the environments we really need to create.
Absolutely.
We had that at we were doing a workshop, and the chief walked in on it and shared his story with us. He shared his story. Remember, Sam, when he sat down at the table and he shared where he almost broke down in tears and said, and looked at the officers that were there and said, listen, if I'm not transparent, if I'm not vulnerable, I can't expect anybody else to be. And I want to share that. And that's the leadership we need. I know it's hard. It doesn't make you weak. And that's what I think a lot of people think. It's going to make you weak. It makes you so much stronger as a leader to be able to do that.
Well, there's so many competing interests now for police chiefs, right? I mean, most of the role models were the militaristic, autocratic leaders. There's something I coined trailblazer leadership that's going on right now. When was the last time, a leader had to lead through the pandemic, and civil unrest? We can't go pull off a book by one of our previous police leaders or militaristic leaders and go, how do I get through this, right? We're writing the chapters as you go through this. So I do have a little empathy for some police leaders that just hadn't had good role models. But that's why we have to network. That's why we have to talk to each other. We have to go to conferences. We have to reach out and watch, your podcast. There are people out willing to help and mentor other chiefs through this. But the chief that's willing to say, I know everything, and I'm not going to sit there and do anything different because my leader didn't have to do that. That's a person that's a recipe for failure. And I'm going to guarantee you that organization probably has a retention and recruitment problem right now.
Right.
Yeah, we're talking leadership in policing and organizational leadership. And with Chief NGang from Pinole Police Department, we will be right back.
Every business needs a dependable junk hauling service to keep their property clutter-free. Call 630-470-8307. Junk Luggers offers a wide range of eco-friendly residential and commercial junk removal services to help your business run smoothly and efficiently. Book your no-obligation estimate with Junk Luggers today. Banks and credit unions have unique junk, and Junk Luggers knows the business. Professional organizers, senior living communities, we're helping everyone clean up and start new. If you're redecorating, remodeling, or getting ready for new tenants, Junk Luggers will donate, recycle, and do our best to keep it out of the landfill. Call 630-470-8307. That's 630-470-8307 today.
Hey, welcome back to a Badge of Honor podcast with John and Sam. We have Chief Neil Gang. I'm from California, 32-year veteran who has seen a lot over the years and has taken the proactive approach to mental health wellness within his organization. And more officers and more leaders should follow your program. And what I wanted to ask you, Chief, is in 32 years, we look at the mental health issues. Back in '93, you said you had the suicide. When I got out of the academy in New York, a good friend of mine that I went through the academy with, he was 6 months on the job, took his life, and it was forgotten about. So back in the '90s, these officers were taking their lives. With 32 years experience, how far do you think we've come as a law enforcement culture on this?
How about not far enough?
Okay, fair enough.
Because remember when I tell you the story of Asher, and there were so many things that were not part of the landscape then, right? There wasn't really peer support back then. If I'm thinking back, really wasn't CISM. There was some chaplains and this and that. All these things are in place now, but yet we're still losing a tremendous amount of officers to suicide. Now, I think back to the days like what you said, John, in the early '90s, late '80s, but how many officers did you hear around the country that died, cleaning their weapons? Now you wonder now if they were just mislabeled or it was miscommunicated, but it was really a suicide, and that's still happening today. There was a neighboring agency locally who an officer died by suicide, and I reached out to the chief and I said, "Hey, listen, I'm sorry to hear what happened. Anything I could do, please let me know." And he goes, "I don't know what you're talking about." And the gentleman got mad at me. He goes, we didn't have a police suicide. I said, okay. I go, well, this is what I'm hearing. I actually know the chief in that jurisdiction where your officer was found. And that's the report I have. I didn't want to insult you. I just wanted to let you know that I'm here for you and we can provide resources. And I'll even send our peer support up, our team, to go help your peer support team. Again, he got irritated, actually got angry at me. And I go, I kind of lost my cool a little bit. And I said, okay, Chief, well, maybe in your organization, you teach people to clean their firearms at 3 o'clock in the morning in a supine position in pajamas. I don't know. I mean, but for me, that's not typical.
Right.
So there's still police leaders that don't recognize this. And there's still police leaders that saying it's an embarrassment to our organization and we're not going to share the real story. It doesn't do us any good. We have to share the stories so we can come together, network, and provide solutions. And part of that is raising awareness, is sharing those stories. And it's powerful when you do so.
Now, let me
getting back to it is when our words and our actions are not congruent, it breeds distrust. And that's why so many leaders are finding that people don't trust their programs or trust them.
Well, here's a big aspect of it too. Not just the law enforcement, the officer involved. How does the family dynamic fit into this? Because now, we have these cops, we have, I'm not going to, I don't want to tell her what happened at the job. And me and Sam have gotten a program now with families involved. How do you feel about families being more involved in with the chief and a meet and greet? Get them involved so they can bring those warning signs to you.
Great point, John. In fact, one of our points in our model is number 7 is family. Typically back in the day, families weren't involved. They were there for your badge swearing in ceremony. Maybe they pinned your badge and that was it. Right. But we have to be inclusive with our families. Now we bring families in on the day they get sworn in. They come in and take a tour of the police department. They go through our TI system, which is our shoot, don't shoot. So they have an opportunity to go through those scenarios and actually watch their loved ones go through those scenarios. Wow. And then every single group that comes through, I meet individually without their loved one with them. And I sit down and said, this profession is going to change the person you love. they're going to act differently. They're going to look differently. I provide them a copy of Kevin Gilmartin's Emotional Survivor for Law Enforcement, real quick read.
Fantastic. Yeah.
And I tell them, listen, we need you to be the champion for us when you go home at night. When there's a red flag, you see something, whether their behavior changes, they're being more despondent, they're drinking more, they're more angry. We need you to feel comfortable to call our peer support team, to call me directly and let us know. Because I have yet to find an employee who I walk down the hallway and I say, hey, how you doing? And they go, well, I'm really doing crappy, chief. Yeah, I'm going through a divorce. I'm taking opioids. I'm drinking, and I feel like killing myself today. That is yet to happen. I'm hoping it never happens, but it's yet to happen. So really, if people are going to look for red flags or changes in behavior, it's going to come from at home, right? Because they're going to come to work in mask. You ask them how they're doing, they're going to say they're fine. Right. At home is when those behavior changes will come. And we need to be able to have that conduit to the families to let us know what's going on early and often so we can get them help immediately.
Now, Chief, you have spoken all over the country. You've been at this, I'll say, I don't want to call it a movement of change, because it should have been a no-brainer a long time ago. There shouldn't even be talks about, hey, I can't afford this, or this isn't in my budget, because all the resources are there. Again, as chiefs, as training officers, we're put in charge of, hey, go find out about the latest and greatest in whatever in policing. But nobody ever says, hey, go find out about the latest and greatest in mental health and wellness. Now, we did have a few at IACP that did come up and did seek us out, and that's what they were there to do, again, to report back. The chiefs and other folks have had unfettered access to you for years. This has been your platform for years. How do you draw more people in? How do you get the message out there to say, I'm here, be that lighthouse. I'm here, use me. There's no judgment. We need organizationally across the United States to open our eyes, to stop sweeping this under the rug. Suicide's going to happen. It's a reality in police work. Stop getting mad. Stop covering it up. Stop calling it what it's not.
Yeah, that was a multi-part question there, Sam. I think the biggest thing is I am not going to sit here today and tell you on your podcast that I'm the only one doing great work. There's a lot of people out there doing great work. And I think that if we all make a commitment to go out and try and change one leader's perspective and try to give them a resource, then I think we're doing our job. So it's funny, 59 years ago, there was one of the best public speakers in our lifetime met at the steps of the Lincoln Memorial, Martin Luther King. 250,000 people came to listen to him. No TikTok, no Instagram, no social media, but they all found there was a mission and everybody found a way to get there and the message got out. So we're going to talk about now in 2022 with all the social media platforms we have at our disposal that we can't get this message out. Podcasts like yours, other podcasts that are out there, speaking engagements. We all have to band together. We have to network together to get this message out to everybody that hears our message. And your podcast is doing that. And that's why I was so blessed by the opportunity and thrilled that you asked me to be on your podcast, because it's just another conduit to continue this momentum, to continue this movement. Because the bottom line is we have to start a movement to stop police suicide. And it can't be done by one person. But if we change one person, if we change each person's perspective one at a time, same way we eat an elephant, then we're doing our job. And I think that we can band together and change outcomes. Because Martin Luther King on that day said he had a dream. But even though he had a dream and he's one of the best speakers we've seen in our nation in our lifetime, I have a dream too. And that dream is that we don't need podcasts like yours. I'm sorry, John and Sam, that we don't need these programs. But the bottom line is I have a dream that we're going to get to a point where we don't need these type of resources anymore. Now, will we get there? Probably not. Let's be honest, right? But the bottom line is we're not going to stop. We're not going to put any less effort into trying to create an opportunity where we're no longer needed. And that would be the best day of my life when they say, we no longer need you to come out and speak to us, Chief Gang.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
that's the best thing. Thank you for your kind words. If it's not our podcast, let it be Chief Gang's podcast. But that's the whole thing. We need to band together, and we are having an enlightening conversation about how to solve the suicide epidemic in our law enforcement organizations. We're gonna take a quick break. We will be right back.
Move freely, America, without medical restrictions or penalty. Without medical freedom legislation in place, our rights and freedoms are one vote away from being dissolved. Move freely, America, with one voice, without fear of retribution, achieving a common goal, medical freedom. We the people make our voices heard by connecting with state legislators and engaging a constitutionally compliant medical Bill of Rights for all citizens. Individually, change is improbable, but as an aggregate, attainable. It's time to act with one voice. My voice.
And my voice.
And my voice.
And my voice.
To protect our freedom, creating one voice that cannot be ignored. This requires your voice, too. Move Freely America. Go to movefreelyamerica.org to find a chapter near you. Plug in, donate, and help our legislators defend our God-given rights under the Constitution. Move Freely America. My voice.
And my voice.
And together with your voice, we're one voice that cannot be ignored. Donate today. MoveFreelyAmerica.org.
Hey, welcome back to a Badge of Honor podcast with John and Sam. We are speaking with Chief NGang, California Police Chief with 32 years of experience in the mental health field and walking the beat and being side-by-side officers. Welcome back, Chief. Thank you for everything that you give in the mental health world and to your officers and to the families as well. But you brought up that point with Martin Luther King. That was 59 years ago. Like I said, where we didn't even have communication with each other, and it drew such a large crowd. I'm just gonna bring this out because it's not only the podcast, it's the organizations. And when we were at the International Chiefs, and here's another aspect of where we find these pitfalls, is another organization came up to our table, right, and turned around to us and said, hey, I'm just here to visit the competition. Now, this was another mental health organization going, I came to your table I wanted to see what the competition was up to. So I looked at her and I said, I'm sorry you view us as competition. Right there shows me that there's an issue. When we have to look at each other as competition and not allies and not support groups, then we have a problem. And if that's happening on the outside on organizations, it's definitely happened inside the walls of a precinct and an organization. Those are the things that we really have to change. We have to look at each other as one, not individuals.
Yeah, John, you made a good point there. I mean, we're all on the same mission. We're all on the common mission. But unfortunately, with that comes competition. And people don't see the greater need. And they're very self-serving, self-aware, and particularly when it comes to money. This has now become a money grab for a lot of organizations. I mean, look around, every year there's 10 more clinicians out there. There's 10 more people writing books. So instead of banding together, everybody seems to be wanting to do their own thing for their own self-awareness. And I say those are the people you want to stay away from, right? We're all on a common mission here. And the common mission is to keep our first responders out of trouble, keep our first responders safe, and make sure we're prioritizing their health and their mental health. And if you can't come together and bond together on our common mission and you want to make it a competition, then I say push people aside and move in another direction. Because I'm going to tell you right now, those are not the people that are going to get this job done. This is mission critical that we do this and we band together. And that's why it's so frustrating to hear that from you, John. But I've seen it in myself, and I've seen it in practitioners, and I've certainly seen it in all these new pop-up companies that are out there.
Yeah, Chief, we've got about a minute left or so. Hey, everybody, if you're watching, you see the Chief's contact information up here. If you're listening, it's ngang@ci.pinole, pinole.ca.us. You know what? Just Google his name and you'll find him everywhere. I want to ask you, with our minute remaining, when you wake up every morning, we've heard clearly over this last hour your mission and what you want to do. How do you care for yourself?
Well, I think it's really important to understand that self-care is so important. The whole oxygen mask theory, right? You get on a plane, they tell you to put an oxygen mask on yourself before you help others. The same thing here. We have to pour out into ourselves to make sure we're healthy enough to pour out into others. And that's what I think is so important. We have to wake up and put those strategies in place for yourself, whether it's going out on a walk or doing mindfulness or doing yoga, whatever meets your, whatever's good for you. You have to decide what that is, but you have to make sure we take care of ourselves to make sure we're healthy enough to take care of the people that are taking care of our communities.
Absolutely. And if you are still have a question mark of exactly how to do that, you can also type into whatever your search engine is, the Asher model, and it's ASHER model. And you will see it is a beautiful schematic, super easy. Just plug in. Like John says, get off the couch, stop making excuses, plug in where it feels right for you. Chief Gang, thank you so much for joining us. Any last minute words?
I always say that the Asher model, there's no copyright. I make zero money on that. If any agency wants the Asher model, we can help customize it for your organization, put your name on it. The only thing I ask is that go through the 7 platforms that are there, make them yours, put the text in there where it works for your organization, use it as a leadership and a group exercise, and make sure that you're getting this out to your people. Again, reach out to us. We'll be more than happy to provide you with a template and be able to get you this Asher model. And again, I'm so blessed for the opportunity to be with you, Sam and John, and I appreciate the work that you're doing. And because what you're doing every day is getting our message out there. And thank you so much for all that you do as well.
Chief, thank you. But if our listeners want to tune into you now, you also host a podcast, correct?
There's some challenges with that, but yeah, I could probably talk to you offline. Yeah.
Okay.
Some technical difficulties with that right now.
All right. Well, I was trying to help promote that, but
Yeah.
all right. So we'll keep people apprised.
Well, thank you so much, Chief. We know you're busy, changing lives, and that's what it's all about. Thank you for being part of this huge, important mission. Thank you for being such an incredible leader, and most of all, thank you for being a friend. Really appreciate it.
I appreciate you. I hope everybody has a blessed day, and thank you for all that you're doing. I can't tell you enough how much I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thanks.
You too, Chief. Thank you.
We'll see you soon. All right, so we have been listening to Chief Neil Gang, Pinole Police Department out in California. If all of our shows, the messaging is important. This chief has laid it out. It doesn't get much simpler. You don't have to create something new. That's the beauty of tragedy, is that we grow from it. Our stories help to change lives. The Asherma, it's right there. If you're going to take anything away from this podcast, take the model. Like Chief said, make it yours. Reach out to him directly. He will assist. And we can only grow stronger. But let's stop this tragedy of suicide in its tracks. We got to change policing as a whole when it comes to our mental health and wellness. And there are so many partners in this fight. I want to welcome the newest partner to a Badge of Honor, the Brave Fight. We've had her on before, Tempa Cheryl. She's an incredible, dedicated practitioner. You can go on to our website, which is badgeofhonor.com, and you will see the logo for the Brave Fight. She's been in the trenches with us for a long time. So if you are recognizing that you need some help, go ahead and click on that logo. You'll get right to the website. Hey,
Sam, I just want to interrupt you real quick. I just want to bring up this past weekend, since you brought up Tempa.
That's where I was going real quick.
Oh, with Heroes on the Water?
Yep.
Oh, okay, then I'll let you bring it up.
No,
Then I'll
you,
let you bring
you
it up.
can, no, you open the door, just
Oh, okay.
one quick minute.
When we talk about traditional couch therapy, bouncing from couch to couch, from therapist to therapist, some people aren't like that. For me, it was equine therapy, like we talked about, and I'm very transparent about that. The equine therapy got me out of my hypervigilant state. First time kayaking with Heroes on the Water, another activity that I thought that I would never ever try or do. And I even came out that morning with you and said, I'm not going out on a kayak. I'm sitting on the shore like a lump. But you know what? I went out there, and probably 5 or 10 minutes out on the water, I felt safe. I felt secure, and I felt my brain start coming back to my prefrontal lobe, where my reasoning, my thinking, I was getting out of that hypervigilant state. I wasn't getting those bursts of cortisol into my body, and I felt good. I'm just talking about it, and I'm feeling good. So it's not only the traditional therapy, it's like the chief said, it's the yoga, it's the equine, it's water therapy, it's mountain climbing, it's getting your body moving and out of a state of hypervigilance. And you'll be surprised if you try these things. Do not give up. If you go out there and try these things, they do work. They do help you heal. And they don't have traditional.
Yeah,
Can
and
be
you can,
whatever that works for you.
John, John made a great video, everybody, on our badgeofhonor.com. If you're watching on Facebook, stay on the page and go watch the video that John made. Again, Heroes on the Water, right on our website. Click on the logo, find out. There's 49 chapters across the United States. Plug into this organization. They are true healers. You know who else is a true healer and dedicated to the cause is Conrad Weaver, the premiere of PTSD 911, the movie, right here in Irving, Texas on November 3rd. You can still, from what I heard, there's still a few tickets available, or it's already sold out. But pop on to the website PTSD911movie.com. Grab your tickets if there are still any remaining. Again, that's here in Irving at the Irving Arts Center. And you want to take your healing and your knowledge to the next level. We talked with the chief about the awareness. You have to be aware first. On November 11th, yes, Veterans Day, we chose this date for a reason. November 11th, with our partners at Garland Police Department, a Badge of Honor workshop. 8 hours of interactive workshop. This is not death by PowerPoint. We are teaching you the tactics, tools, and giving you the resources to build your own resiliency toolbox. And so throughout that 8 hours, we will share our stories, how we came through our suicide attempts to get the help that we needed. Learn how to ask, learn how to be proactive, learn how to deal with things like maybe you have the signs and symptoms of post-traumatic stress. We're not telling you you do, but we are giving you the resources so that you can be empowered to say, hey, I need some help, and this is what it looks like. That is November 11th, 8:30 to 4:30 at Garland Police Department, a badgeofhonor.com. I put something, this little turn-in thing. My tech skills are very limited, but hey, I try. You can register right there on the website. We take care of you, breakfast, lunch, all the materials, even throw in some cool swag that you need. So don't be a stranger. Learn how to support yourself, support the podcast, support what we do, like and subscribe. And then on the website, you can hit the donate link right up there, because your donations all go to provide scholarship opportunities for first responders to attend our workshops, because we all know brain health budgets are different. John, take us home.
With the chief, and he's a man of faith, and I want to bring this up. I usually end up and
you got 10 seconds.
I end the podcast with if you could be anything, please be kind. But if you could be anything, please be kind to yourself. You owe it to yourself to accept the traumas and be kind. Let them heal you. Until next week, this is John and Sam. Peace.
Take care, everybody.
A Badge of Honor podcast is produced for the OBBN Network podcast and protected under copyright law. For content permissions, please submit your request to abadgeofhonor.com on the content page. For OBBN Network programming information, please call 214-714-0495 today.